a CI/CD environment, it's an automated environment where somebody checks in, it takes the code, it will build it. In this case, it will first build the Angular code, generate the public folder, and then builds the .NET code, publishes the zip of both Angular and .NET that is picked up and deployed to Azure or any cloud environment, example. So it all happens one after the other as a stage. Stage 1 is build Angular, stage 2 is build .NET, stage 3 is publish the artifact, stage 4 is deployed to Azure. So how all these things can be connected together is one is, there you can always, every job there is a way to configure. Once this job is done, you can say trigger another build or trigger another pipeline after this is complete. So you can always link them up that way. But there's a easier way or a better way of doing it is using pipelines. So if I now create a new pipeline, example .NET. So I'm going to create a pipeline here. Instead of selecting freestyle, I'm going to select pipeline. Now, pipeline is not using the UI which we saw so far. Pipeline will be using the Groovy script, so which I'll show it now. So yeah, so now here if you see, you don't see all those options of build steps or anything. You will basically see something called pipeline script, which is right now empty. Now again here, what important things that you need to know configure in the pipeline is, one is how many, whether you how old builds you want to keep, example, and other thing is, if especially pipelines will have parameters as well. Example, we discussed in our jobs also, whether you want to build a debug release version or release version. So how do you pass those, right? You can do this in jobs also, but here I'm showing the pipeline. So you can create parameters for your pipeline. So example, for this pipeline, let's say I want the user or whoever is triggering the pipeline to select the whether it's a debug or a release, the configuration of your build, example, or you want somebody to select the release nodes which is required for his build. So these are the parameters that you can select. Example, if I just add one for now, and then I'll add a string parameter. Or let me add a choice. So choice is configuration type, example. So here I'm specifying it. The options can be either a debug or a release. Now in your project you may have multiple, but here I have the two choices, configuration type and build. Now I can use this name in my Jenkins pipeline to directly access the value that was selected in my pipeline and use it to pass on to my MS build and other stuffs. But yeah, so that is, you can have multiple parameters. We'll see how it looks when we're triggering the pipeline. Again here, everything these remain the same. I can schedule it, and I can so I can schedule, I can do a polling and all this stuff for the pipelines also. And then now this is where the pipeline script will come in here. Now I can have sorry. Okay, I can have inline script where I can manage my have a script as part of here, or I can have my script in my as part of my source code, and then I can say that pick my Jenkins file from create a file called Jenkins file in my project. I can have a Jenkins file here. If I go back to, yeah, this is a root. I can have a Jenkins file here, just like Docker YAML. I can have a Jenkins file, and I can say that the complete pipeline comes in from a file called Jenkins from the source code. So in this case, I'll select the script. It is always recommended to keep it in your repositories so that you'll be able to maintain the complete history of the changes of the pipeline and everything. But here I'll use the script for this purpose. Now, now let me use a simple this is okay. So now this is how your a simple pipeline looks like. So you will define everything. No, Raja, this is something called a Groovy script, Groovy language. It uses a Groovy language to define the pipeline. Okay, so generally in most of the tools you will mostly use either Groovy, YAML, or shell script, right? One of them, most of the tools use them. So YAML is also mostly used. Groovy is mainly used in Jenkins and few other tools, and shell script is also used in automation side, right? So yeah, so that in this case we're using Groovy. Okay, so so here when we're defining the pipeline, we can every pipeline will have stages, and you can have multiple stages defined here. So now one other thing we can specify is just like your job, here you can specify which agent you want to use in case of pipeline. Now, now in our jobs, we are using the .NET agent. So here, if I say any master will decide to, based on availability, it will pick up the agent. So we can also specify, specify the label of what we need. Example, I might say master. So what it means is, I'm saying run this pipeline in the master node, but run my jobs in the .NET agent. So I will have two kind of nodes running, one for pipeline, one for the jobs. Okay, so now what you can do here, right? Example, now again, what we have done so far, my first stage is to build uh, Angular code, right? And then I will have one more stage, which is to build my dot, right? So my first stage is a dot. Oh, my first stage is an Angular stage, Angular code, and then second is .NET. I will have, in a real world, I will have other stages. One, as I said, to collate all the output artifacts and save it into a repository or into artifact server, then use one more stage to deploy to Azure App Service. I will have all those stuff, right? So in this case, we'll have two stages. Now, how do you, and then, there is Jenkins has this pipeline syntax helper, which will help you to generate the syntax for most of the common artifacts or common steps, right? Example, if you want to publish it on Azure web app, and you can specify all the values that you need. Example, I can specify my Azure credentials here, select the resource group and say generate, and I have my script ready, which I can copy into my as a step here. Example. So this will generate, if you're new into Groovy and everything, this will help you to generate. Example, if I want to, I use the archive, right? If I want to archive, I'll give the path. Example, now this is the path which I want to archive. So I can go here and then say generate, and it will generate me which I can copy into my as a stage number 3 example. So this will really help to ensure the syntax, everything is managed. So in this case, in our case, we're trying to trigger an existing job or existing build, right? So that is generally, that is the task for build a job. And here I can select, .NET Angular build. Sorry, once again, I don't know which one did I. So I'm basically giving the full path of the. So if I go to webinar, and that I have Angular build job. So if I go back to my script, and then I'll say build job, and then I'll say Angular build job. Okay, and then I can and then I'll generate a script. Now I have my script. I will copy and add it as a step in the one step. Instead of echo, I will do and build Angular. And similarly, in order to build .NET, I'll just change the name of the job, which is if I go back to my album view.NET job, right? So this is my name of my. So this will take care of building the Angular. This will take care of building the job. Now I can have one more stage, where I can archive the, as I said, archive the artifacts, right? And here I can have either a copy command, or I can go here and go back to pipeline helper. right? I can have a pipeline helper go here and do an archive and then generate the script. Right? Here, this will be just okay. Now these are steps. So what I'll do again for this purpose is, you will ideally give your relative path of your debug or release folder where you have the source code. For now, I'll just give one folder for our understanding purpose. I'll select this path. It will, in a real world, it will be a real relative path. Okay, so I'm going to select this path and then I'll say apply. So now what I have here, okay, I'll have to it's a escape character in case of Jenkins. So you should follow it up with 2. Okay, so now what happens is it's not a run. So now if I build this particular parameter, now if you see, if you remember, we added configuration type as a parameter. Now here, whatever options I gave, I can see the options which are there. I can select either release or a debug, and this variable name can be referred in the pipeline to get the value which I've selected here, and accordingly pass on to the job or and use it in the script. Now, once I do a build, uh, build, okay, it is not. So if it says, it has started, but something went wrong. So if you see, there's a syntax error. So let me go back, configure. Probably there's an issue in the script. Right, so these are the steps, and then you have a stage. There's one more stage. Yeah, something's wrong here. There's an probably extra. Right, so it was basically syntax error. So now I have 3 stages, one for Angular, .NET, and Archive. Now I'll do a save and do a build. I can select anything, and then now I'll go ahead and see the output. It's still not done. Okay, something else is. So this is the stage 1, 2. Okay. So the closing for the pipeline was missing. Okay. So now I'll do hopefully it should work now. Build. Now it is able to continue. So now it will start the pipeline, and the first thing it will do is it will first run the Angular build job. Now while it is running, you can still go into individual job, and if you see, it is waiting for, it will continue with this particular job, and then it has started to build the Angular in the .NET agent while your pipeline is still running in the master agent. So if I go to webinar .NET, now if I go into here, it is still running in the master node while the Angular build is running in the uh, .NET agent node. Once this is done, it will wait until this job is complete. Then it will get into the next stage where the .NET is built. Now it is building the .NET. It will go ahead and complete and then do the archiving part. So the view here, what you will see here is, if you go into .NET Angular, you will see this kind of a view, which again, there are a lot of plugins which you can use to modify and change this. But there's a default view where for every execution, it will show the status and the time taken in each stage. Example here, it says, Angular code took 35 seconds, this took 17, and it is still going on, and there's an error in the archiving, right? So this is, the view where you can see every time for every execution what is the state, and you can get into logs and see. If I click on logs, it will take me to that stage. So it says that something is wrong in my path, right? So ideally, it should, if the path is correct, it should work. But yeah, so this is the pipeline side of it. Now you can do, you can do anything, whether it's a Docker container image or deploying to Azure, deploying to AWS. Everything can be another stage here. If you're running a unit test cases in your project, if you want to automatically test your APIs after deployment, it can be a stage. So it now depending on your requirement and the steps, you will define the stages, you define the steps, and since it's a script, it's a coding. If since it's a script, now in a bigger multiple projects or bigger organization, most of the projects, maybe every project will have Angular or .NET. So the scripts can be developed in such a way, to reuse the steps. These steps can be defined as a common step in a common repository, and then pipelines can reuse them. So that's more to do with like just like coding, reusability, and making it easy to manage. But this is the very basic steps that you will do in a Jenkins to create a CI pipeline as a job for .NET and for Angular, and you will use a Groovy script to create a pipeline where you can invoke individual jobs, or whatever job I've created, you can invoke them as a command directly also. You need not create a job and then invoke it in a pipeline. But yeah, this gives you more different. It's just about organizing, right? You can have a different job for Angular, different for .NET, and then you have one pipeline which connects everything together.